morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another fine Wednesday morning. Welcome to another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, he, they pronouns, executive producer, Light Thief Productions, and we've got a great show for you today, or at least I think it's a great show. We're going to be talking about the $2 billion housing project that Mayor Parker is proposing. We're going to be talking about climate health and climate health denial. Climate health isn't talking about the health of the climate, it's talking about your health as affected by the climate. We're going to be talking about the texting of national security secrets in the open on Signal. I don't know. I don't know that it's a good idea. You may have a different opinion, but let's go through it and see if we can find the forest through the trees, as one of the folks that I talk regularly with said that we're not doing. And we're going to talk about Canada's snap elections. U.S. politics goes beyond our borders and affects things worldwide, interestingly enough. And so we have affected the politics of Canada, and we've caused them to consider holding snap elections. And that should be interesting. We'll talk about how that's affecting their politics and what they're doing about that. Sometimes people try to destroy you because all they see is your power and they don't want it to exist. Bell Hooks is the quote for today. That's a paraphrase of the full quote. Check out the comments for the full quote. Our special special guests today are Doriane and Aimee, Tribe 12 Workshops, Curlyfish Productions. I'm going to bring them on screen so they can introduce themselves. One moment, please. There we go. Welcome, folks. If we could start from the center there with Aimee. Aimee, if you could introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Hi, my name is Aimee Goldstein. Pronouns are she, her, and I am a producer and a co-founder of Curlyfish Productions.
Great. And then if we could go on to Doriane.
Hi, I'm Doriane. I use they
Doriane,
and
sorry.
she pronouns. Yeah, no worries. They and she pronouns. I also co-producer of Curlyfish and also a playwright and photographer and a little bit of everything.
So tell me about, so we were talking a little bit in pre-show about Tribe 12, the workshops. Tell us a little bit about the workshops, what people are doing. These are writing workshops, correct?
Yeah, so the playwriting workshop is kind of my brainchild. It is a very selfish project. Actually, at the very start of the year, I said I need a space that I have to cultivate playwriting and to have a space dedicated for it. And as we talked more, I think Aimee and I found that there was a need for a Jewish playwriting space in particular, because being Jewish right now is a very, I mean, it's always been a complex experience, but in our current day it is a bit of a high stakes experience as well, and we need a space for Jewish voices to be heard, whether it's speaking Jewishly about a topic or not. So we partnered with Tribe 12, which is a Jewish organization for people in their 20s and 30s, and in our partnership with them, we want to create this space where we can introduce Jewish texts and have some Jewish thematic elements to the programming, but really allow for a free writing space for people to adjust and come in as they like and write about the topics that are on their mind. So that's a little bit about my 2 cents on it. But Aimee, if you want to talk a bit more on it as well, feel free.
Yeah, so Every workshop that we have, and again, this is a new workshop that we're starting this year, and so we've only had a couple, but we're excited to see how it grows. We're excited to see new members each week. We're excited to see old members continue and see how they get from where they started to where they might be. It's very process focused. It's not really about finishing a play. I mean, that might be your personal goal, and that might be something that you want to do if you're at the workshop. But every workshop starts with a either Jewish text or poem or story or piece of art that the writers can either use to get inspired by, or they can completely avoid it and just say, wow, those were some nice words that was just read to me. But I am writing something totally different and I don't want to use that whatsoever. And that's totally fine and cool. And then we kind of go into a mini writing session based on that or not. And then we go into sort of our own writing space that you can work on. And the beauty of it is if it's at least 3 to 4 to 5 or 6 people at these workshops, you can always workshop an idea with someone else. And something really fun that happened last week or this past month rather at the playwriting workshop was we actually had the opportunity to read each other's works aloud, or at least maybe a scene from our work or something from a 30-minute brainstorming writing session. Again, that's not something that might happen every week, but it's something that the group that was there this past month felt extremely comfortable and confident doing. So that was really fun to see.
What is the ideal thing that you would see happen as the result of a workshop like this?
I'll give this
Such a
one to
great
Doriane
question.
because it is
Yeah.
their brainchild.
Um, Ideally, so the group is for anyone of any level. So in my ideal fantasy world that hopefully will become reality, and maybe I'm manifesting it by speaking it out loud. But I would love for people who have never written a play before to try it out and learn something new. For someone who has written a play before to maybe think about it differently now that they're in a Jewish space. And for Jewish artists to explore playwriting in the way that feels most authentic to themselves. Because again, I really do feel like there aren't, or at least for me, there wasn't a space where I could explore being a Jewish playwright. I was like, oh, I have to write a certain way to be Jewish and be a playwright, and that felt weird to me. And I think if we come out of this and there are, you know, 5 new plays that are all different degrees of Jewish to not Jewish, but they all came from the same place and from the same container that we held space, that is like the ideal best case scenario in my mind. Like seeing that work has come out of this, art and thought has been put into this moment, and it is coming from a place that is a Jewish space. Whether or not those pieces are, conversations on what's going on today, or what happened in the past, or maybe it just takes place during Hanukkah. Whatever it is, I think there is value in bringing those voices to the table. So I really want to see voices getting a chance to be heard and new pieces being developed. Whether it's a final iteration of a piece or not, I'm a lot less concerned about that. It's more that the voice is getting out there and getting a chance to be heard.
Which I think is sort of at its core, one of the key missions that we have as Curlyfish is to sort of amplify those unheard and untold voices and their stories. So with this playwriting group, it's less about writing a play that screams Jewish in your face, though it can, but more about creating a space for Jewish writers or people who just want to write a story and have maybe a Jewish character, and they want to be around other Jewish people to get their feedback. I have a friend who hasn't been able to attend our playwriting group just yet, but is excited to because she is writing a play about a Jewish group of people and wants the experience of being a part of a Jewish playwriting group to help bring out parts of that story that maybe she wouldn't get working on her own in a room in her bedroom. So yeah, we're really open to anybody, but any level of playwriting or not. and excited to see where we can go.
What would you say? So, like this podcast, this broadcast was created similarly to open people for the ability to amplify less heard voices. There's a lot of work done in the smaller side of production, the independent side of production, where we all seem to be making efforts to amplify voices of people in the minority or who don't get to express majority opinion, or their opinion isn't expressed as a majority opinion. Um, why do you think that this space, this artistic space, is attractive to that effort?
Hmm, that's a good question. I think it's funny. So we actually, Aimee and I both just went on this Jewish magic retreat over the weekend with Tribe 12. And it was really cool. It talked about magic and Judaism, where it shows up, where it's been repressed, where it's pushed down, things like that. And over that experience, my sister was there as well, and she pointed out, wow, there's a ton of artsy people here. That's really cool. And it got me thinking that art is a tool, and it's also like an experience that opens us with welcome arms, and an expression, and there is no wrong way to do art. It is simply is, and it's bigger than all of us. And I think having a space that is welcoming and opening as art itself, whether the politics around art can get dicey, and that can get that's its own beast to handle, when you're commercially making art, but art as an inherent subject is there and open, and allows us to process these ideas and feelings in a way that something like I don't know, doing your taxes doesn't let you do. You can't process your feelings and expressions while doing that. Maybe if you're a really good accountant, that might come up.
If you do, that might be a problem, but
It might be, yeah. It would be amazing. But I think the idea of having when your voice is held back for so long, having a platform where it can actively be heard, and like theater specifically, you have an audience of people in front of you, and you are putting something on stage. Whether they want to or not, this audience is most likely going to stay in the audience for politeness reasons for however long you keep them there. And you will have a message that is being said to them. And I think that is a very appealing topic for someone who feels like their voice has not been heard before, or who might not even realize their voice hasn't been heard before, but they're craving something, and they don't know what that is. So that's kind of where it comes out for me, I think.
Aimee?
I think that was just so beautifully said. I was like, my breath was taken away. I was like, yeah, I'm agreeing with everything. Um, I I agree. There's nothing new I could add to it. It would just be rewording of the same things. But I I think there's something about artists not being prioritized, whether or not that is in the world, whether or not that is America, whether or not that is in a school where funding goes or doesn't go, that voices that aren't heard just really, really, really want to be heard. And that's been passed on sort of from generation to generation to generation. And like being able to cultivate a space for it, it doesn't matter that there's maybe now 15, 20, 30 different organizations or theater groups within Philadelphia trying to amplify unheard voices. I think it's great no matter who you are or what you do. Um, I just think there's this strong desire that just comes more deep rooted than based off of current events, but rather just based off of who we are and what we've desired to do so for so long. It's This is sort of off the topic of Curlyfish, but right now I'm also involved I'm acting in a production, and it's really hard to do theater sometimes when you have a full 9 to 5 like I do at the moment. But um, the reason why I agreed to this one and the reason why I was drawn to it was because I wanted to tell the story. And it's a story that I thought was a story of a marginalized person in a time period that needed to be heard. And that's important. And so, sort of bringing that into like all the work I do on a personal level as a theater artist and all the work I do with Doriane as Curlyfish sort of all goes into that.
What would you say is your ideal person to come to a workshop?
Ooh.
I have
We might have different
like
answers.
so many answers for this. On one hand, I would, and we have had people like this come in already, but like someone who's like, I've never really done playwriting before. I just showed up and I have like a notebook. I think that is awesome, and I want them to just try it and just like really push to just like get some words on a paper. But also, I think this could be a really good space for a playwright who has done some playwriting before and wants a community of Jewish people to be around to hear their work through that Jewish lens. So kind of like a twofold. Like I would love someone who comes in who just tries it out and just has never done this before and is just taking a chance and like really being brave and going for it. And also it would be a wonderful opportunity for someone who has been writing plays to get to look at their work in a different lens with a different community and feel supported, trying new things that maybe they wouldn't have been able to experiment with on their own in a vacuum, writing in their bedroom.
I think for me, a nice 50-50 split of what you just said, because we're not a playwriting class. It's really just a group to write. So if we get all people who are, aspiring playwrights who have never written a play before, then it kind of becomes like a class. They're all kind of there like, okay, what do we do now? What do we do now? But if we get a group of only people who have written plays their whole lives, it might not be as fun. It kind of makes me think of when I had a high school music teacher who said he loves teaching high schoolers more than he likes teaching college students because the college students already know how to play the game. And when you're in high school, you some of them are more experienced, but then there's others that are new and experiencing something for the first time. Like Dorian is definitely uh, more of a seasoned playwright than I am. I've I've written a cabaret, but I haven't written by myself a full play with dialogue. I've written some monologues and some poetry, but I haven't gone single-handedly start to finish on a play myself. And so like I welcome people like me with open arms, but I also welcome people who have written plays who are really seeking that specifically Jewish space that hasn't really existed.
Um, it sounds like a very welcoming open space, something that, folks need, and that it can open opportunities for people to express themselves and join a community. Real quick, how can people get information on the workshops, and how can they get information on Curlyfish as well?
Yeah, so Curlyfish Productions, we can always add our website in the chat, but we're also on Facebook and Instagram at Curlyfish Prod. But always happy to add that in the comments or in the description of the show right now. And then to get information about the playwriting group specifically, you can actually go through Tribe 12, which is an organization in Philadelphia for Jewish people, all denominations, 20s through 30s. And we're utilizing their space in the Weitzman National Jewish Museum in Philadelphia and Old City. And it's typically on the third Tuesday of every month, except for April, because April falls on Passover. So there'll be a new date listed for that. But if you go onto the Tribe 12 website and onto their calendar, typically you'll see it on the third Tuesday. I also like to post it on uh, some Theater Philadelphia Facebook groups, some Jewish Philadelphia Facebook groups as well. So if you have any questions, please, please, please feel free. You can email us as well. um, curlyfishprod@gmail.com. So either way, happy to answer emails or DMs or any questions you have.
Awesome. Um, to break with the idea of welcoming opening spaces and to get into current events, I want to talk about a type of space that we all seem to directly counter, which is the kind of the male masculine conservative space, and talk about how that exists and what the differences are here, which I think setting up with a description of the workshops is actually really relevant. If you've never been in a masculine space, I have because I'm a guy, and I grew up as often the token representative of minorityness in any area that I lived in. Um, the masculine space is often driven off the shame cycle. So whereas like we're open to having people come in, tell their stories the way they want to tell them. The shame cycle masculine space version of this would be to have you come in and then tear your writing apart and tell you were no good, and kind of haze you into the space that way. Um, the reason I bring that up is because there's been a meme going around that says perhaps Democrats should or liberals should think about getting mean. Um, it's when you look at it, yeah, maybe so. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe the disconnect here isn't that so much what we want, but how we associate. People who are creative and liberal and thoughtful tend to associate by method of, hey, I want to hear what you have to say, take it in, try and digest it in order to understand it, and then repeat it back to you and associate with it by way of finding my commonality with it. At least that's my understanding. Would you say you guys do the same thing, in kind of your spaces?
Yeah, I think our spaces definitely have a lot of kindness in them and a lot of grace. There was a woman I worked with who's a writer and a poet, and she's incredible. Her name is Rachel Kahn, and when I worked with her, she approached critiques of writing with like kind of radical kindness, and we would talk specifically about what worked in a piece, and we did not dwell on tearing things apart. We did not dwell on picking a side or like, and there was still room for feedback and criticism, but it was very radically kind criticism,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is really interesting. And politics is a totally different world and a totally different game. So I think in arts, there's room for, and I think there should be room for radical kindness. But when we expand to what political structure do we live in, I think that's a different game we're playing with people who do not play by those rules. So it's very different.
Right, and
Yeah.
I think that oftentimes as liberal people or progressive people, I don't even know where I fit in this world. Like, I don't agree with everything that anybody has ever said. Like,
Yeah.
that's my problem. Like, I'm equally as flummoxed by I don't know, Chuck Schumer not pushing back against continuing resolution as I am by Republicans just proposing a continuing resolution that defunds everything.
Yeah, I wish that there was a like I don't know if I wish this. I was gonna say I wish we lived in a world where it was okay for people to say I don't know the answers, but like that wouldn't be very great either, because then we'd be like, who's running us? So which is kind of, where we're at. But it's I wish that it was more acceptable to say what you just said in like so many spaces, which is like, I don't know where I stand. It's the world isn't white or black. It's complex and it's dynamic and different people with different views can come into it. And it's like, it's so interesting what you said about like the masculine spaces, because I'm thinking like, okay, with Curlyfish, the space that we have created this unapologetically Jewish and unapologetically queer space. And like, what does that mean to us? And for us, a lot of it is leading with kindness and leading with openness, and leading with acceptedness. But without trying to speak too out of terms, both Doriane and I, outside of theater, work in specifically male dominated fields. And we try to take what we learn and how we act in our art spaces and apply them to how we work and how we manage things in our corporate spaces, which again is separate from politics, but I feel like there's different steps. Um, and I just, I think a lot of our people making decisions, they just need to take an improv class. I don't know. I just think that'll solve so many problems. Like everyone just take an improv class. Um, but yeah, I
The
don't know.
yes
I
anding,
derailed.
yeah, the yes and kind of mentality could go a long way to solving world peace, I
Yeah.
think. But I don't think we'll ever get there, because what I was
No.
gonna bring around in the conversation is, just as an example, I grew up with what I would consider a very loving and accepting dad. He was very open to however I wanted to present myself. And yet he was a product of his generation, and so his way of showing love might be to make fun of something that I'm very proud of. But that is by way of accepting it, to be mean, in order to show that that thing is acceptable. I'm trying to think of a good example, but even just like my long hair. I've had long hair most of my life. I've always liked long hair, and his way of accepting that was to tease me about my long hair, but in teasing me about my long hair, it was very obvious that he had accepted the fact that I was going to have long hair. Um, and that goes around in male spaces in other examples too. Like, if you go into, say, a boxing gym and you're shorter than the average boxer for your weight class or what have you, you're going to get teased for being little and not having reach and whatever. But in that teasing, you're being accepted into the group, as part of the group. They wouldn't provide that teasing feedback unless you were already accepted into the group. If somebody came in that they weren't going to accept into the group, they would just not provide any attention whatsoever. So this kind of negative attention, this kind of negative feedback loop, exists on the right. It exists in masculine, especially white masculine spaces. It exists in politics, especially in Republican politics, in the right wing politics. You have people like Marco Rubio, who's in Trump's cabinet, who he literally called Little Marco for the entirety of several years of campaigning. People who Trump made nonstop fun of, and yet they're part of the inner circle now. Um, what, what I want to frame the rest of the topics on is that perhaps there is a need for us to approach things from this kind of getting mean in order to create an in crowd that is accepting, not to create an exception, not to create an other, but to create a space within which the ideas that people have are open to being explored. And what I wanted to start with is Mayor Parker's $2 billion plan to address housing in Philadelphia. I don't know how much you guys got to read of this. Um, there's a lot of critique of it already. It's establishing a city approved list of qualified contractors, offering tax breaks in neighborhoods, converting former police headquarters to housing, reworking zoning codes. It's a very encompassing plan. Um, and Mayor Parker, for her part, is of that kind of negative feedback loop type personality as far as I have been able to engage. She's very quick to defend herself and her positions and say, this is the way that we're going to do this. Did you guys get a chance to look at this at all?
I looked a bit at the article. It's not a topic that I'm super well versed in, so I am really curious to hear your thoughts as we go about. And I don't know much about the mayor, very like her personality and things of that nature. So I'm really curious.
Yeah, I mean I skimmed the article. I don't have much knowledge of what's going on with the housing, and I am also curious to know some more. I mean, you have to be a strong person to get an entire city to make fun of themselves and her to misspell eagles. Um and just go for it. So I agree with you in the fact that she does seem like the kind of person who's like, okay, even the negativity on herself she uses as a positive to like get people to like her more, which is definitely an angle to go on. But in terms of like her policy for housing, it's just a topic I just haven't been as versed in.
So I mean, housing in Philadelphia has always been a kind of a hot topic. It's been hot topic for generations. We have an aging population. We also have a lot of incoming population. We also have a homelessness problem. I wouldn't call it an epidemic as much as people who are reactionary and like to, have things to complain about do. I would call it the logical result of bad policy and kind of racism in action that we see all over the world, but in a city like Philadelphia, where you have the majority of the population is poor. The city itself, even though it's one of the top, I think we're sixth or seventh in size now. Um, we're even though it's one of the top sized cities in the nation, and even though it's the founding city of the nation, even though we're in the middle of the largest economic corridor in the world, we struggle constantly to retain talent, retain money, retain businesses and investment. And investment often seems to go to the top few percent of the population. It's always been interesting to me throughout the election campaign season, and even before that, even in the previous mayor's administration, to see who concentrates on housing as an issue and the arts and the economy in general, because um, one thing I often talk about on the show is that the arts economy is one of the largest contributors to Philadelphia's economy, the actual bread and butter moving around of money in Philadelphia that there is. We as artists move the city of Philadelphia a lot. And we every dollar that the city spends on promoting the artistic sector, they get back in tax revenue because there's a 3,000% ROI. So when you're collecting 3% taxes, you end up getting every single dollar back. Um, it's so all of this is interesting from that perspective, and to see a different mayor deal with it in a different way is also interesting. I've often been negative towards how Mayor Parker deals with things because I don't believe in non-evidence based um, initiatives. I believe in, hey, let's collect all the evidence. Let's see what actually works through science, and then let's invest our money there.
Yeah, I definitely have feelings on that too, where I'm like, okay, it doesn't from what I have seen, and that's where I'm saying like I don't know that much because from what I have seen, it was like, well, where are these decisions coming from? Like how are we making these, it, remote work and non-remote work is, not been scientifically proven. How can you say bring every single person back to work when not even hiring back your electricians to make sure the lights will go on in the buildings? Like just these almost based in good ideas but rash decision making is something that like I've definitely sort of seen, but I was like, well, maybe I'm just not well versed enough. Maybe I just don't understand. Like obviously, I think we do have a housing problem in Philly. We do have a homelessness problem in Philly, but I don't know. I don't know how she's making the decisions that she's making, and so I'm just sort of like, maybe it's really not the best way of doing things, but I'm kind of just like blindly trusting what happens because we'll see what happens, and in 4 years it will change again. But in the same regard, if she does make some really positive gains toward helping homelessness and helping with housing in Philly, what happens in 4 years or in even 8 years when someone comes in and maybe reverses those policies? Does that mean all the work that's happened is gone for nothing? Or does that mean that maybe it didn't go very well and maybe it'll be great, but we have to wait? And so I don't really have an answer to what should be or shouldn't be, but I definitely think it's something to think about.
So, I guess the question comes down to, and forgive me, I haven't, like I'm playing with these pieces in my head. Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with it. I'm constantly juggling all these things in my head. I guess the question comes down to is getting mean, is getting direct, is pushing through things in an opaque way, even with good results, preferable to not getting those results because you're trying to get everybody on board in an open and accepting way.
This is really fascinating. So, in a lot of spaces, I think this started with a lot of Quaker spaces, but it's adopted in a lot of Jewish spaces. But the idea of consensus decision making is kind of been a hot topic lately, and that is where everyone needs to be in consensus in order to make a decision. Like I had applied for a job way back when at a college that was a Quaker school, and they needed every single person in the department to agree to hire me before they would move on and hire me. And it was a very long process. And 3 months after meeting everyone in the department, I got a letter in the mail, not even an email, a rejection physical letter in the mail saying I didn't get the job. And it could be because one person didn't like me, or one person wasn't 100% on board with having me. But consensus decision making is really difficult. And I kind of bring that up because I think that kind of lives in this space of like approaching as kindly and as calmly and as acceptingly as possible. And that goes at odds with this world that we are living in that is moving at a much more aggressively fast pace. And like Aimee mentioned earlier, we both work in male dominated fields. I work in tech, and I do consider my company to be pretty liberal, and we have a very great company culture. We try really hard to approach everything with kindness, But yeah, like there will be, I work in tech support specifically, and people will come in and they'll be mean because they got to get something done. And there's one thing to be rude, and that's where, abusive language is being used, or just in polite practice is being used. And I don't really tolerate that. And I think that shouldn't be tolerated. But being a little mean because like we got a deadline and you guys aren't listening to us, and you need to fix this as soon as possible. Like that's their language to get something done, and they are our customers, and it is a shared goal to get the product working the way it should be. They're not opposing us by saying get this fixed. They're actually helping us in doing that. And I personally, in my own personal life, I try to be a nice, kind, accepting person, but I don't mind being a little bit mean to get something done. And if it's for a problem as significant as like the housing issue that we have, I think if approaching from a softer side hasn't solved the problem is there. We can't live in an idealist world and base everything off of an ideal, because that's fiction as of right now. That is not where we're living. We can use that to guide our decision making, but when we live in it, then that's a detriment. So I really see the value in being mean, especially in that sphere. And again, it's not the same as being rude. It's not the same as being abusive or exploitive. I think being assertive, which also can be conflated with being mean. Those two are really interesting terms. When do we consider something mean and when do we consider it assertive? That's something to explore as well. But I think those can all be part of the conversation and need to have a place in order to get things done.
Yeah, I'm like outside of theater, I'm a project manager, and I'm a very sensitive person. I respond best to kindness and try to lead with kindness. But at the end of the day, if something needs to get done or if we have like a deliverable to do and it's other people aside from myself are being affected by it, I think there's a difference between being mean and being assertive. And it's not it's a learned skill for sure to become assertive. And I do think that there's a line between being mean and being assertive, and sort of like saying this is what we got to do. And maybe you use comedy to get yourself through it, or maybe you're sarcastic about it. But I do think that it's definitely a way to get things done. And there's nothing really, I don't think, positive or negative about it. It's just a way of getting from point A to point B.
So let's talk about national news. Trump administration, obviously, making a lot of cuts, doing a lot of things that people think are very bad ideas. I am included in the litany of people who think that a lot of things that are happening are very bad ideas, very knee-jerk, very unconsidered. Um, Yet, at the same time, there are things that have been proposed for a long time. Focusing, of course, right now on the thing that we brought up, which is the Trump administration, through the National Institutes of Health, has completely eliminated funding on climate impacts on health. So, like, this is an area where it's probably the next generation of top leaders of negative health outcomes. Right now we have cancer, we have heart disease, we have diabetes. These things are kind of, the cardiovascular system is kind of the focus of extending human life at the moment. I think that environment and climate change are going to become the answer to what is causing people to die the most. I think that we'll get to the point very soon where climate things are comorbidities for our top health, our top causes of death. At the same time, how do we you can take this from the perspective of how do we get mean and say, you know, it's stupid to defund research into how climate affects health and get people on board without, because the stupid argument doesn't work. The calling it stupid, calling it dumb, whatever you want, like the people on the opposite side of this have already been sold the idea that we all think they're stupid. um, even though we don't, we're happy to listen. I have made a point many times of saying, I am happy to listen and have a conversation with anybody of any political spectrum. I've sat down with conservatives in meetings repeatedly and walk them through how our goals are exactly the same. Everyone's goal is exactly the same. We all just want to, at the end of the day, we all just want to get to, like a comfortable place, have a nice meal, enjoy raising our kids, and move on. Like that's really all anybody really wants. And nobody really wants to. Nobody really cares about the minutia of all this. We all want the same things. How we get there is based on our growing up and our worldview. And I've said this a million times, and spoken with people directly. And when you speak with people directly, it's clear that they that they understand that they aren't stupid, and it's also clear that as people who believe in progress or believe in evidence-based taking on of things, analyzing things, that we have a messaging problem of how do we communicate. It's not that you're stupid, it's that the way that the shortcuts that you're taking are too short and you're missing the bigger picture. How to either take it from that perspective, or then alternately, is it just that the administration is being mean and getting things done, as you said?
Yeah, it's hard because one of the things that's so scary about today is seeing how fast things are getting done, and part of it is because they're getting mean and they have an agenda and it's getting accomplished, and that is something we haven't seen at this pace for a really long time, to the point where I didn't think it was possible to move as fast as they are moving. So I don't really
to
have
your
any
point,
answers.
I don't think it's
Yeah.
legally possible to move as fast as
Yeah.
they are.
No, it is.
It's legally possible. I've been shocked every day. I get my little New York Times headlines of like, wait, they did what now? It's
Yeah.
super new. So yeah, I don't really have answers to this one. It's a bit appalling, and learning how to speak a shared language of critique is really difficult when you're coming from those two different worldviews. And having your voice heard uh, isn't necessarily the way to play the game. It's kind of like having someone else hear their own voice and learn from that own voice what they are doing, whether it's right or wrong. But like again, right or wrong is the whole moral argument. It's like it gets really interesting.
But that takes time, right? Like
Mm.
listening to other people's points of view, and even listening to yourself, and maybe even like reading the document that you're signing. Like that's a time
Mhm.
consuming process. And that's why we're getting things done so quickly and so like harshly, is like, yes, people are being mean, which is awful. And like it's seeing where the world is going, and like reading a history book and taking the time to listen to what people are saying and listen to what's happened in the past. Like it's absolutely terrifying how fast things are moving and the decisions that are making and where we're going. But I don't think those decisions are getting made because people are being mean. I think those decisions are getting made because people are being mean and they're not listening. And the listening part is what would take some time. And maybe if people listened, maybe they wouldn't be so mean. And I think like it's like a slippery slope, but I definitely think that like there's something you just said, Doriane, which was like, not, you didn't say the word listening, but you were like, they don't hear each other. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's because
Mhm.
they don't listen to each other. And that's the time consuming thing that no one seems to be willing to sort of do.
And
Um,
they have power. That's also the other thing. They have power. And if you have power and you're not doing anything with the power, what's the point of your power? And I feel like that is at play as well.
let's talk about how. So what I find interesting and what I find this reflective of is the Canadian Prime Minister is calling for a snap election in parliamentarian government. For those that don't know, um, parliamentarian government can call for elections at practically any time. That's to get a clearer picture of what the people who are represented by their representatives in Parliament actually want. So a prime minister, which is the elected by the parliament head of the parliament, can say, you know what, I don't think all of the ministers here actually represent what the people want. I can call for an election in a reasonable amount of time from now. Let's see what they actually want. Do you guys actually stand for what the people who are voting for you actually want? So, Canada, faced with a Trump regime that is obviously wreaking havoc on its national politics and on its economy, calling into question whether it actually is a legitimate country, etc., has called for snap elections. It's using the reflective moment of looking at, hey, you guys have been moving towards conservatism. We've been moving towards isolationism. The U.S. is actually doing it. They're our neighbor. You can see what is actually happening here. Is it actually representative of what the people want? So they're using their system of government to actually call into question, observing the results of the United States and saying, "Hey, is this actually what you guys want?" Um, I think that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know what those types of elections were until you just explained it. So I'm really glad I know about it now. But I think using the evidence of what's directly in front of them is a really smart way to make a decision and
Yeah.
to reflect in a space that I don't think like politics doesn't usually leave room for reflection like that. So I'm pretty fascinated by it.
Yeah. I am the same. I also didn't know what it was until you explained it. But it goes back to the whole listening thing and thing of idea way of consensus and just taking the time to hear whether or not, who knows if they're going to listen or not, but they're giving the people the opportunity to have their voices heard, which I think is a step that we haven't really taken in the US in a while. So it's fascinating to see how Canada does it and to see what we can learn from them.
I think it's interesting that this system exists as it does, and that like how it affects interplays between actual governance and also how that system is covered by the media. Of course, Canada has its own talking heads, its own people, its own political theorists, and they're all espousing on what this means, what this means for their government, etc. A lot of the conversation is driven around, well, this is a progressive leader who's replacing Justin Trudeau, who was replaced because he was accused of being ineffectual. He was accused of not moving fast enough. And so this is, in my way of speaking, in this conversation that we're having today, Mark Carney getting mean. He's getting mean. He's moving fast as the Canadian government can legitimately move to change tack, and doing it in such a way that it's legal and also interestingly participated in by the population. Um, we just had elections in the U.S. I don't know. Does an election does would another election have different results at this moment? I don't know.
That is,
I don't know.
so hard. Yeah, I couldn't say. I don't know what people have learned and what people are clinging to, and if people like even the conversation of a vote is still a hard conversation to have with people. There are still, people who are grappling with the ability to vote and the fact that that is there. So would it change anything? I would like to optimistically say yes, it would. People would have learned by now, but I think people are clinging on to things that they need to let go of that are holding us back.
Yeah, I agree. I think it goes back to like James, what you were saying a couple minutes ago about, at the end of the day, we all want to get to the same point. Like in terms of voting, I know people who voted Democrat because for different reasons, they either strongly believed it or they did it because their families did, and that's just what they do. I know people who voted independent because they were like, that will save the election, therefore everyone's going to vote independent and neither of them will win. And that's what they believe, and that they still have the same goal. And I know people who voted Republican because they stuck with the devil that they knew and they thought that was going to get them to the result that they wanted. And like at the end of the day, I don't really think anyone's happy. So did people learn? I can't say because everyone has, a different skill set of what their ability to learn and how they get to where they get. I like Doriane said, I would really hope that, things would be different if we had another election today, but it's really hard to say.
Just recognizing the time is 10:59. I'm gonna go on for a little bit. I know I forget who had the heart out.
I do. Oh, I'm so sad we didn't get to the signal texts. I was so sad on that, but I do
I'm
have
gonna
to go
cover
back.
that here. And you're free to stick around, Aimee, if you'd like.
I can stay for about 5 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think I can be 5 minutes late to work if we're covering the signal text
Okay,
because
let's
I
talk.
have a
Let's
thought.
talk about let's talk about
this
getting
is for
things
Doriane.
done possibly a little bit too fast, which is over the weekend or over the last couple of days, it's come out that the national security team is essentially planning military action via Signal, the Signal app. Signal app is not OpSec, which is what I created the title out of. Although I do use it, I've used Signal. I've used Signal for secure communication. There's a litany of things that this brings to the forefront. Not the least of which is that attacking people in a random country is illegal military action, but we can get through really deep in the weeds here. I just want since you have had a thought, let's start with your thoughts. I'm gonna hold back on mine, and then because I've got all the time in the world, so go ahead.
So I am a CompTIA Security Plus certified IT professional. So I have a nice little shiny certification that is hanging up in my little office space. And when I read that such high stakes conversations were happening on a like consumerist application, I was like, it blew my mind. Because I think Signal is great. It's a great secure application. I can't speak to the layers of encryption or to how it's actually built out that makes it as secure as it is. But for a journalist to end up in this group chat, just an uninvited party to end up in a group chat and observe war plans as they are happening. That is such a vulnerability to the point where they didn't even share all the screenshots in these articles. They didn't share all the screenshots of these messages because if our enemies found out, if our adversaries found out, that could be a detrimental outcome. Anything of that level, I'm like, all right, where is our security posture? It's gone. It is out the window. So I was appalled by it. I think the decisions themselves that were happening were rash, and I don't understand that strategic route that we went to make these militant decisions. But the physical, like, I think it's such a an accurate reflection of the decision makers in charge of they are not thinking about these things. And I think even one of the articles we were looking at, there was a head of security or someone who the journalist had reached out to saying like, hey, I got in this group chat and this feels like a problem. They were like, oh well, nothing bad happened, so it's fine.
Well, yeah, that was our DNI officer. So, our national intelligence director doesn't think that it's a problem for a journalist to be on a high level literal meeting between the vice president, the director of the military, the national intelligence officer, and a bunch of other people discussing war plans that haven't yet happened.
Yeah. I don't have a cybersecurity certification like Doriane, but something that I do know just in general and just by, spending so much time with them is anything can be hacked. We have, baby cousins and little nieces and nephews who are terrifyingly good at hacking, in a playful way to just create their own video games and to change their own video games. But like that can apply to many things. And like obviously there are sites and things to look out for. But not everybody knows those things because they are not a certified cybersecurity specialist.
And what this really speaks to is even certified cybersecurity specialists are open to having hacks. And what you're describing as hacks isn't just we're trained from birth to be hackers. Every toddler that gets you to do something that you didn't want to do is hacking you. That is a hack. Every person is capable of hacking. And what this was, even though Jeffrey Goldberg, the journalist, did not attempt to enter this space, it is a classic hack. He's on a whitelist in Michael Walz's phone book, and probably an aide grabbed the phone to set up the group chat because Michael Walz isn't the type of guy that has the time to set up a group chat. He probably said, hey, add everybody that should be on this chat to the aide, and the aide didn't really recognize this two initial person, but thought that it was somebody that was relevant to the conversation. That's a hack.
Yeah.
That just Jeffrey Goldberg didn't intentionally hack everybody, but he accidentally hacked people in the same way that an intentional actor would. He ended up appearing as a friendly in a conversation, in a high-level conversation. That is why these conversations normally take place in environments that are tightly controlled, where you can't hack your way in. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to advocate for hacktivists because part of my certification, I'm not allowed to partake in any of that world. But this leaves the door open for hacktivism, and that is been a cause of concern in political spheres and in all different sorts of reputational elements. Like hacktivism is here and it's using hacking to spread your agenda or your world belief or whatever you are trying to accomplish. And if it's this easy for the wrong party to be included in a group text essentially about militant plans, what else is out there that people can be doing right now? Again, I'm not allowed to advocate for this type of thing. I'm just saying that the hole is there. The void is there and it can be filled. And it really poses such a risk to the point that I'm almost really curious to see what people have decided off of this, because just like someone with the skills to hack, like technically learning about this incident, that's a light bulb in their head saying, oh, if this is that easy, what else can we do? So I'm curious to see what happens next, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, like I'm not it's I have Signal, and like I use it, but not to talk about, war plans and not to hack into people's war plans, but like it's been lovely to have a conversation about like a nice book that I'm reading and it not be on my entire Instagram feed because the algorithm doesn't catch it. Like that's nice. It's nice to, talk about a book and not be, ads everywhere about it. But at the same regard, like maybe we shouldn't be having these political conversations on an app that can be gotten into whether or not it's intentional or not. Um, I think yeah, I'm also going to be fascinated to see where that conversation goes and what happens.
I'd like to thank you guys for joining me today. I'm going to keep talking in a few minutes, but I wanted to give you last thoughts. Anything additional you guys want to bring up, and see you off before I talk about the last couple of things we didn't cover.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much to you for having us on the show and for bringing such engaging topics. I think Curlyfish uses art a lot of times in escapism. That is one of, I think, my favorite parts about creating theater is allowing room to be present and allowing room to escape. And I think it can exist in both places. So as much as I love to use playwriting to escape, I also love moments like this where we can have a dialogue and be present. So thank you so much for having us.
And thank you.
Thank you both. It's been great. Just want to echo really what was just said in terms of, we don't always get the opportunity to have these open conversations and sort of get our ideas and our thoughts out there, and also to be educated about maybe a topic that we find interesting that we didn't know about, and provide our thoughts and our feelings. And just wanted to say really thank you for giving us this opportunity. It's been really great.
Thank you for coming on. You're welcome back anytime, of course. And I look forward to seeing the results of your workshops, and I hope they go well and you get lots of platform for unheard voices, and help people express themselves in ways they need to.
Great.
Cool.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a good show.
And thank you to you guys for joining us this week, as every week. What we haven't talked about, I wanted to talk real briefly about the idea of habeas corpus. It's a legal conversation. It's law. It's deep. It's difficult. I was on vacation last week, and that's when the Trump administration decided to start taking people to El Salvador without trial. That I don't know. I know you may have a reaction to that. That may bother you on some level or another. I don't think that it probably bothers enough of us enough. I think it's something you should really think deep about, because here's the problem. Without the concept of habeas corpus, habeas corpus in Latin roughly translates to "show me the body." It's the court's way of saying you have to have the accused and the crime present. You have to be able to show that the crime happened before somebody can be punished for it. Without that concept in our law, anybody can be accused of anything and thereby jailed for an unlimited amount of time without reason. I mean, it sounds simple when you put it that way, and I don't know that you can make it more complex without making it out of reach. But that is the long and the short of it, and that's why it's really important. the Trump administration's sending of accused criminals to El Salvador without presenting them to a court for adjudication on whether or not they are accused criminals, even if the court was to be a drumhead court, something that doesn't really carefully examine the evidence, um, it is at least an opportunity to provide a check on the ability and so you know how people make a distinction between may I and can I? Because there's a lot of things that an administration, an executive can do. An executive can drop bombs on a city block and set it on fire. An executive can arrest lots and lots of people and throw them in jail. An executive can move people around the country or around the globe with or without their permission. Um, may they? No. That's the difference. The problem isn't a matter of we talk a lot about norms and things that we've always done a certain way. That's not the problem here. It's not a problem of norms. It's not a problem of violation of politeness. It's a problem of violation of what should happen. This is something that should not ever happen. This is something that we have had multiple wars over not happening. The moving of people without trial to a third party country is blatantly illegal. It's been illegal forever. It's illegal whether it's the result is slavery. It's illegal whether the result is death. It's illegal no matter what. It's illegal even if you were putting them in a resort hotel that they didn't want to be at. People are due the decision of where they want to be. And the decision of taking away that freedom is not and cannot ever be associated solely with a sole decision maker. It cannot be the decision of one person or a random INS agent or even a single judge. That's why, you hear about people spending so much time fighting their case and appealing the decisions in their cases. That level of scrutiny is necessary when taking the freedom of somebody's movement, because that is one of the only freedoms we have as human beings, is deciding when and where and how we decide to live. The movements of the Trump administration caused something of a crisis within my own psyche. I published a lot about it on my personal Facebook. I published a little bit about it also on the Light Thief Facebook page, but I don't think. Again, I don't think that people are as bothered by this as they need to be. Um, this isn't resolving anytime quickly. The Trump administration is doing everything it can to assert its right, assert that it has a right to move people independent of their own volition. That doesn't stop with just accused El Salvadorian or Venezuelan gang members. that doesn't stop with LGBTQ people. It doesn't stop with women. It doesn't stop anywhere. The idea that an executive has the right to choose where and when you exist is not functional. It cannot be supported. It has never been supported in the history of mankind. And it is instantly universal. If for some reason the Trump administration manages to find a set of judges and lawmakers that declare that the executive is allowed to move people without trial, it's not just the end of the country. It is the end of even the idea of country. This is a super serious topic, and I'm probably going to spend a lot of time on it in the coming weeks. I think we all need to pay attention to it. I think it's more important than possibly anything that has ever happened in this country. And I can't believe that it's not getting the attention it deserves. Um, we often talk about how Republicans might split up, poor people and black people, or talk about how LGBTQ people, or queer, transgender people are being split from queer people, or how women are being split from transgender people in order to defeat them. Uh, the position that the administration is taking with this El Salvadorian expatriation of Venezuelans is that they can literally split all people down to the individual and decide what to do with them. That may not catch you up in the immediate future, but it is a long-term and serious concern. Um, I think it's something that deserves more attention. I think it's something that you should look at. I hope that people start to pay attention to it because it's a serious matter. Um, and it's something that is going to affect us all. Um, that's all I got for this week. We we can talk about getting mean. We can talk about how politics should go. We can talk about how we approach things as individuals. We can argue over those things. But what we can't argue is that anybody has the right to tell anybody else where and how to exist. Because we don't. Um, that's what I got for this week. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. I hope that these conversations you find valuable. I hope that we can get to a place where the fun of the conversation is not about violating information security on national security level, but that it's about the intricacies of what Facebook is doing this week. Um, at any rate, I hope you're enjoying. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. As I said, we'll be back next week. Consider hitting the like button, the subscribe button. Tell your friends about this broadcast. Share it with people. Share clips with them. Do what you do best as far as promoting and getting this information out there. Um, let's see, one sec. Let me see if I can pull up next week's guest. Next week we have Danielle and Megan, the Tribe 12 founders, and we look forward to talking to them. As I said, enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. Hope you have a good week, and we'll talk to you then.